Okay, welcome back. We are returned to item 9, regular business B, the discussion regarding the traffic circle following the NCDOT public meeting. I think many of the council members probably have something to say. I know I do, so I will kick this off. I think almost all of us stopped by at some period on Tuesday night at the Fair Barn and saw a lot of our fellow citizens there, and saw a lot of the red shirt team there from NCDOT answering as many questions as they could. So obviously this is an issue that's been around here since June of 2022, because I remember the first time we had a council presentation here. Dr. Morgan, you and I were rookies, and it was about a 2 to 2.5 hour presentation, slideshow, very well done, professional, and that sort of opened the discussion for this topic, at least during my time on the council. So let me begin by thanking the NCDOT for the public meeting early this week on their latest proposal as an alternative to the current Pinehurst traffic circle. I have given this thought, and I have 4 points I'd like to cover. One is I think it's important that we have a brief historical overview of how we reached this point. 2, the importance of public comments. 3, some of my own observations, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then next steps as I see them. By way of background, as I mentioned a moment ago, in June of 2022, 6 months into mine and Dr. Morgan's joining the Village of Pinehurst Council, we heard our first presentation from NCDOT on a recommendation for what was then called the Continuous Flow Interchange, CFI. It was about a 2.5 hour presentation, and it was, as I said, a very thorough presentation. When it was done, there were various comments that came quickly out of the mouths of some of us. One member of the council commented that after he had seen the diagrams and drawings, it felt like someone stuck a knife in her heart. And she said the circle is part of our character. I commented that the proposal looked like in order to save the circle, we needed to destroy it first. 6 months later, the village sent a formal letter to DOT indicating we were unable to support the options they presented. But we offered 10 suggestions for immediate improvements. To our delight, they agreed on 2 of them, and by January of 2024, they installed those lane dividers along the circle that separate those lanes, those sort of rubber sticky things that seem to have stood the test of time. And they installed some clearer overhead signage. As people approach the circle, you'll notice the word "only" from time to time. That was not there 2 years ago, and particularly for newcomers, they would be in the wrong lane and realize it too late, and then they would try to swap lanes. 3 months later, in February of 2024, NCDOT announced a new proposal, and it was identified as the shifted pillow. That included the taking of parcels of private property, the cutting off of the historical Midland Road access to the circle from the Village of Pinehurst, and lots of traffic signals and very few trees remaining. By June, many Pinehurst residents became active with yard signs and meetings and letters to the editor. They improve the circle, don't destroy it. We were all recipients of a variety of emails, and I'm sure like many of you, I was often pigeonholed it at a public event or something about the circle. NCDOT then, in July, held a meeting, public meeting like they did the other night. They held 3 then. They held one at the Pinehurst Elementary School, one at Aberdeen, and one at Carthage. And about 1,000 residents showed up, and largely voicing opposition, which had been building to the shifted pillow. In August of 2024, after all those things occurred, public input, public hearings, this council unanimously adopted a resolution opposing the shifted pillow. We found an unusual group of allies. All 3 of the area garden clubs adopted their own resolutions. The pilot editorialized critical of the shifted pillow and did praise NCDOT for accomplishing something that no one else had ever been able to do, and that was to unite every faction in the village of Pinehurst to agree on something. So, of course, our resolution offered to meet and discuss other alternatives with DOT. We had never just closed the door. We knew we needed to continue the discussion because we, too, wanted improvements to that traffic circle. So in October of 2024, we sent a formal letter to DOT. Once again, we had sent one back in January of 2023 to DOT with some specific suggestions again for improvements, some similar to the ones that were in the January 2023 letter that had not been taken up by the NCDOT. The pilot actually ran an editorial on October 29th calling for smaller changes at the circle like the Village of Pinehurst Council had suggested, which was a pleasant surprise. In June of 2025, NCDOT rolled out their newest proposal. Councilman Taylor, myself, and Village Manager Doug Willardson, we began meeting with DOT officials, and Tuesday night, this past Tuesday, was the public hearing. We had at least 2 pretty lengthy visits up there in Carthage, swapped ideas and suggestions, and posed questions, and we provided answers back and forth. So that's what occurred in the last 3 years. That's a Reader's Digest version, but that's what occurred. The second item I wanted to touch on is what I'll call public comments. I want to drive home the point, which I've heard from my colleagues from time to time, of how important public comments are. That was very apparent when we went through the shifted pillow discussion. This new proposal, as mentioned earlier, the comment period closes November 12th. So for those of you who are listening or here, please provide your comments to DOT on their website. Some of you provided them right there at the public meeting the other night. I saw people doing that. And please comment to members of this council. Your views are very important to us. They help shape our thinking. I know they helped shape mine last time. Third item was a few observations. I went back to the original press release that DOT put out a few years ago about their goal. The DOT's stated goal is, quote, to move traffic more safely and efficiently through the circle. That is their goal, an admirable goal. At this point, I'm not convinced that the proposed design does that. I am convinced the additional circle proposed for Airport Road and the restricted access now placed on Beaver Lane are very good ideas, which were not in their previous proposal. And I know we specifically talked to them about Beaver Lane, so they were responsive to that issue, making sure that that access continued for the residents who live there. I think it's a good idea that they're planning to widen 15501 North to Carthage from 2 lanes to 4. It's a very good idea. That road is the only 2-lane road of the 5 roads that go into the circle. Every other road is 4 lanes. So you're guaranteed a longer backup there. They're indicating that they will be doing that at the same time they're planning to work on the circle, but again, I think that's a good idea. And I think the allowing of continued access from our historic Midland Road to the circle is a very needed correction from the last, the shifted pillow proposal. And again, it was something that we, both in the resolution we adopted and in our conversations with them, had recommended. So thank you, NCDOT. The current circle, getting back to their stated purpose, move traffic more safely and efficiently through the circle. The current circle has not recorded a fatality in its 65 years of existence. It's quite an interesting fact. The proposed plan will have 3 intersections and 20+ traffic lights. Circles are safer than traffic lighted intersections. That's not my opinion. I stole that from the Federal Highway Administration and the North Carolina Department of Transportation. And if you notice, they're adding a circle at Airport Road. And I think that's good because it'll be safer there. I've literally seen a traffic accident at Airport Road when people are, if you know, where they're trying to get quickly down towards the airport or to St. Hills Community College, and you've got those people coming towards the circle. If they don't see both lanes, I saw it happen once. Now, the design as presented, there is not a similar design in North Carolina for a 5-spoke circle. And I remind everybody that this is the 20th different design put forth by NCDOT since 2014. So this is the first time we've seen this version, but probably because they went back to the drawing board and were trying to come up with something new, of which, as I said, there are things in there that are, I think, very constructive. And lastly, I am still uncomfortable because I cannot determine for sure, and they haven't been able to express with certainty, just how much private property will need to be taken from residents for this specific proposal. Last time, it was more. They were much more specific. This time, what I'm hearing is it's going to be less. I think, then again, that is a step in the right direction. But for me, that private property thing is these are residential properties, backyards and so forth. That's a touchy subject. All these points aside, construction is not planned to start until 2031. There's not a sense of urgency. 6 years from now, we might all be flying around just like George Jetson with a power pack on our back. We don't know what the world's going to like. 6 years ago, who had AI? So I'm obviously being a little facetious there. I don't expect any of us to have power packs and being like George Jetson. But my point is, that's a long horizon. So I view myself as a bit of an incrementalist. I don't understand why we should wait 6 years for the construction to start without taking what I'll call easier steps in the meantime to improve the safety and the efficient flow of traffic, whether it's actually adding a speed limit in the circle, whether it's putting some rumble strips down to keep drivers a little more alert as they approach the circle, maybe earlier signage for cars approaching the circle, maybe other ideas that my colleagues have or that residents have. There's constantly residents. I met a few of them at the meeting the other night who come up to me with an idea. They're very excited about their idea. And most of the ideas I've heard before, but these are residents who are seriously, when they come up with an idea, what I hear them saying to me is please, try not to have the circle too divvied up. And here's my idea that might help you. So finally, as going forward, what I'm recommending, at least this evening for my colleagues, is that after the election of 2 new council members, at our next meeting, I would like to designate John Taylor and one of the new members who's elected to carefully review the comments and start meeting with NCDOT during the first quarter of 2026 and see if we can settle on a solution that is practical for all concerned and will be a roadmap that will move traffic more safely and efficiently and minimize any negative impact to the special character of our village and the integrity of our National Historic Landmark. So those are my thoughts that I literally scribbled out this morning. And I thank you for your indulgence, and I will defer to my colleagues for any other comments, and we can also pose questions to one another, but I'll turn to my right. John Taylor, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think the thrust of the article that the pilot put out on Wednesday, I think it was in the updated version, I don't think it was in the main paper, that comments were generally favorable is accurate as far as it goes. People like this a lot better than they liked the proposal of a year ago. I would say I'm in the same camp myself.
Less ugly.
But less destructive, less ugly, less urban. A lot of, and the introduction of the traffic circle at Airport Road and Midland Road. There are a lot of things where this is a step in the right direction, let's call it that. And I would credit public input as being very responsible for that. But the thought came to me as I was talking to people walking around is we have 2 different people coming at the same problem with a different set of priorities. From the DOT standpoint, it's about engineering. And they're making forecasts, how much traffic and so forth and so on, and expected wait times and whatever. And it's all driven by numbers. People's objections are largely on aesthetics. I didn't have a single person come up to me yesterday who had any real forecast of their own. They think it's too high, it's too low, whatever. A number of them said, you can draw a parallel to what is proposed, which is 6 lanes connecting 211 and Midland Road east of the circle, 2 through lanes and 2 left turn lanes, is what they now have at 15501 and Morganton Road. It's 6 lanes there. And every single person that I spoke with, every single one who goes through that intersection all says wait times have gone up since they introduced that. And this is before we've had any large increase in population in the apartment buildings along Morganton Road and so forth. And my own experience would mirror that. If you get in one of those left turn lanes and you're too late for the sensor to know that you're there, and you have to wait an entire cycle through there, it doesn't matter whether it's 6:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll be sitting there 2.5 minutes, because that's what it takes to go through the full cycle. And they're forecasting what they think is a higher volume area, that whether it does a better job or not at peak times, there's going to be larger waits during non-peak times. And is that the trade-off that people should really be looking at? My own questions were, why this design? It was not one of the 14 that was studied a year ago in the 431-page document that the DOT's consultant did. It still feels pretty urban. There's this 6-lane highway. And there are several questions which they still can't answer. Pat referenced one. As 211 comes down into the traffic circle, it's 2 lanes currently. It's going to need to be 4 lanes in this proposal. Each lane is 12 feet, so that's another 24 feet that they need, plus a right-of-way. It's round numbers, 40 feet additional space that they'll need. And that's going to impact possibly, because no one will say for sure, some of the backyards of the people on Morganton. Now, last year they were talking about having properties taken by eminent domain. Now they're talking about a sliver of the backyard being taken. And someone asked the question, well, if there are really going to be 80,000 cars a day going through the circle, what's the noise level going to be? And I actually found out who the person is who will do the noise survey and spent a good bit of time talking to him, understand the basis on which they do it and how they do it and so forth. But they can't really say yet exactly where that line is going to be. So that's just one example of some of the unanswered questions. The Department of Transportation is in the process, has been in the process for a year now of updating their transportation demand model. And part of what happens when they finally get the model right is they go to all the municipalities and they ask them to make some 20, 25-year forecasts on population, employment, so forth. Doug, I know, has done ours. I actually spoke with Scott Walston last night at the meeting. He's pretty, I think at the upcoming SMPO Technical Coordinating Committee meeting, which is next Wednesday, he's got them all for all but a couple for the communities in the SMPO, and he believes that for the parts of Moore County not in the SMPO, those are all done. So it's going to be interesting to see what those population forecasts are, how they square with what the state demographer is forecasting and so forth. And that brings me back to something that Pat said. This is not something that a decision needs to be made today. They're not going to do right-of-way acquisition until 2027. They're not going to stick a shovel in the ground until 2031, after the next set of U.S. Opens. So I personally believe that there can still be room for improvement here, that although they called this the final design, they called last year's the final design also. I agree with Pat, and I'd be happy to serve on. I think we've been effective as a council designating 2 people to work as a subcommittee. You know, Barb and Jeff on Deer, and the 2 of you on Jack and Barb on PDO. I think if we designate 2 people to sit down with the DOT and take a look at what the public comments are when we know what they are, because that period doesn't close until November 12th, and see whether there isn't further ways to improve on this, whether it's one of the previous designs or modifications to this design. The DOT has been very public about the fact that they want there to be public support for this. This is not going to be an imposed solution, and I think that's why public comment will be critical. It's a step in the right direction, as I said earlier. I think maybe there's room for further change, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Dr. Morgan.
Lots been said there. I won't rehash much of it. Traffic circle, to go back to what John mentioned there, you got engineers talking about flow, volume, and you also have talking about aesthetics. They're not engaging because of the aesthetics, they're engaging because of flow. It serves 2 purposes. You have to move traffic, and you also want a pretty entrance into Pinehurst, and they're trying to work with that. I totally agree that they have worked to try to make sure Pinehurst is satisfied. And I think they're going to continue to do that. I thought about a year and a half ago we had the conversation, and basically, John, you and Pat were going to be representing us, this 2-person type of thing that's been going on.
Yeah, that's
what I think where the new council comes on, that's a smart decision to do that, to continue with that. The one other thing I would bring up in association with that is that I think that the relationship that Pinehurst has had with NCDOT is one that probably could be improved upon. And just the respect issues back and forth, communication, things like that with that. And so I think the council, for the new people that come on board, certainly to be able to focus on that and enhance that and have the communication flow going back and forth would be helpful for us. I think it was great. I was at the meeting, saw a variety of people putting in comments. Clearly, it makes a difference. Thank you for putting in those comments, and thank you to the NCDOT for taking those comments and hopefully being able to improve and have a design that we improve upon. The biggest issue I have, and though I'm rotating off the council, I maintain this concern, and that's of eminent domain, and that was brought up. And so I was pleased to see that it's improved from before, chagrined to see that there are still some aspects associated with that. One thing, when I asked the question, they did say this is the worst case scenario, and we're not sure about this, how much is going to be 5 feet, 10 feet, that kind of stuff. That's still not a full answer for us. And so we need to drive on that more, and I would encourage the next council to certainly be focused with that. So thank you, that's all I have.
And Jeff, I would say that I think in the discussions Pat and I have had, they've been good discussions. They've been very open, and I think the relationship is improving, and there's more work to be done there. Agree with that.
Thank you.
Barbara Ficklin, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I agree with everything everyone has said. In addition to that, I would like to point out one other goal that the village has had, in addition to focusing on aesthetics, is also focusing on the quality of life of the people who are going to be affected by anything we do. This particular recommendation has traffic lights, as was presented, which means that there will be stop-and-go movement within that perimeter 24 hours a day. And assuming that we widen all the roads coming in there and we have increased capacity through the intersection, that means a lot more traffic 24 hours a day, including at night. And if you've ever been around a major intersection where it's stop and go all night long and there's truck traffic, you hear a lot of downshifting, you hear a lot of stop and go. It is very aggravating. And one of our residents pointed out the fact that stop and go and 24-hour activity will impact the quality of life of the people around them. And that's very true. When you consider how many residential areas surround the traffic circle, and also as you're coming in from any direction, we are lined by residential areas. And yet this is a design, the only one of which we found in Massachusetts that, Doug, you were familiar with, mentioning that it was anchored by a Costco that served 3 million people. You know, I can understand an intersection like this up there. I'm not sure I see it as appropriate for Pinehurst in the future. So this is beyond aesthetics. This is about the quality of life of a lot of our residents, and I think we should keep that in mind. The other concern I have is that it's all based on an increase of 30,000 trips per day by the year 2050. That's 25 years from now. And as I look, if what we're looking at is just an extension of trips that are coming into this circle today, we are missing the big picture. I mentioned earlier that I had gone to an event where someone from Amazon was talking about what they're doing in Richmond County. So think about the Moore land use plan, Moore County land use plan. Think about what's going on in Chatham County and other counties all around us, and how that is going to affect traffic patterns 25 years from now. So I think we kind of need to broaden the scope. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Jack? You were here pre-circle, if I remember right.
Pre-circle, you're right. I don't really have a lot more to add from what Barb and everyone else has said, to tell you the truth. I think that that business of living near multiple large intersections with stop-and-go traffic is very, very serious, more so than you really think. Having spent a short time in the hospital a little while ago, I can tell you that is noisy as cars accelerate from the stoplights, and now you'll have X number of stoplights. There'll be more accelerating. It'll be a very noisy, busy place 24 hours a day. I'm also mostly concerned with, or a concern is as many small incremental items that we have mentioned to NCDOT, very few have really been seriously considered. We talked about sight lines. We talked about the approach angles on certain roads, like 211 into the circle is too acute. And if you look at the crash data, you see that it varies by approach angle, and they haven't seemed to take any of that seriously as far as making some minor improvements. I asked one of the NCDOT people at the meeting the other day, what will be the speed limit through this section? Because Midland Road is 35 and 211 is 45, as it turns out, and they had no answer. They said, I hadn't even thought about that just yet. So the speed limit through this 6-lane section of road may be a contributing factor to safety issues. And I think that they've been very reluctant right now to even modify speed limits approaching our current circle, which may or may not help the not only the traffic flow but also the safety issue. So there's so many small incremental improvements that could be made over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years that may substantially make a difference. The other thing that kind of bugs me a little bit is the design is for the worst case scenario. Design is for the peak hour traffic, the backup for the peak hour, whatever that is, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's not for the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week traffic. So it's all designed to relieve the peak traffic hour backup. And yeah, that's important, but if you're driving during the rush hour, you expect to be backed up, any place in the world I've ever lived. So I think there has to be some realistic assessments as far as what is the design objective. I mean, does it really make sense? Those are the few things that I could add on that one.
All right. Thank you, Jack, and fellow council members. Clearly, we have an interest in going forward and continuing the discussion with NCDOT. We want to hear from our residents regarding their thoughts, original ideas or not. I do want to close by just complimenting NCDOT, and in particular Chief Engineer, who's always been accommodating if we wanted to have a meeting, and would even send emails back to, questions that we might have, and he would give very precise answers, or as precise as he could. So look forward to continue to working with them. And we do, I think it was, may have been John who said, the timeline allows us not to make a mistake. They're not talking about acquiring right away and thinking to 2027. You said they're not going to put a shovel in the ground at 2031. There's no real change happening around there. Land-wise, there's not going to be a Costco or something going to be all of a sudden try to be developed. There's what's there is there. So we've got the benefit of some time here, which is one of the reasons I talked about trying to target that first quarter in 2026 as to coming to closer to some sort of a solution when we'll have more data. We'll have a couple new members on the council, and we'll take it from there. Okay. All right.
Before we leave the NCDOT thing, I saw in the paper, and I wish I had cut it out and brought it in, there is a public hearing or a public open house for the improvements scheduled for Morganton and Route 5. And I believe within a couple weeks, and I believe it's at the elementary school. So
Oh, if we can find out the date on that, maybe some of us can
Yep, yep.
attend it.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that meeting, so, but thanks for
There,
letting us know.
it was in the pilot, yesterday. Now, the last one I went to, or tried to go to, at the
Yes.
elementary school, I and three other people were the only ones there. No one else showed up, so it may or may not happen.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, well, if Doug finds something out, he can let us know. All right. The next item we have, item C, is the discussion on ideas to proactively address visitor behaviors at short-term rentals in Pinehurst. Doug, you have a memo to us, and why don't you walk us through?
Yeah, I want to give actually Barb a lot of credit for this, because these are her ideas, but.
Okay.
So we have a few ideas here. I think the thought is if we can let people know what the expectations are when they arrive to the village, when they're visiting, that might solve some problems later on down the road. So we have a few options here. One is communicate with all the owners of short-term rentals. So we have sent a letter out in the past and said, encourage your guests to be good neighbors. But one thing we could add to that is maybe a magnet that they can put on the fridge or a poster that they can put near the front door that kind of specifies some of the things we want them to consider, like what the quiet hours are, what their trash day might be, that they need to bring their trash cans in at the end of the day, things like that might be helpful to avoid neighborly problems. And then the second one was to add some signage at our neighborhood. So we have currently this sign at the beginning of all our neighborhoods, the entrance, and we could change it to something like this. So just, no parking the right of way, keep the noise down after 10. Maybe if there's something else we wanted to add to that, we potentially could. Just as long as the sign doesn't get too big.
That's certainly friendlier, but do we need to reference the ordinance number and all so forth in order to be legal?
It doesn't have to be listed, but we can certainly add it if we wanted to.
We don't reference it whenever we say no parking. So I wouldn't think we need to reference it on this one. I think it's just going to clutter the sign up.
I think the message is clear, and
If we add signage like this, is there anything that we should add to a sign like this?
other than maybe our pine cone.
Instead of one of those swirly things, you can add a
Yeah.
pine cone.
Do you think AI can make a pine cone?
AI can make a pine cone. It made this
Okay.
sign, so.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's AI generated, so.
I don't know how to better state it, but someone coming from out of town, are they going to understand where the right-of-way is? If there was a curb, you'd say no parking in the street. There's not a curb.
Yeah.
We know what it means, but I'd ask you to think about it. I'm not sure I have a better suggestion.
Yep, we can consider that. And then the last suggestion was that we create a voluntary gold standard program wherein they allow a inspector or a village employee to come in and check for some of our life and safety measures and ensure that they're being compatible with all those things. I did speak with our village attorney about this one specifically. He had some cautions. So because it's voluntary, I don't think we have a legal issue if we wanted to set something up. But some people could be upset that you're giving someone an advantage because you created this program, and so you're giving someone else an advantage over someone who doesn't want to do the thing. Also, if there were ever to be if the inspectors go in and find a violation, what if they don't fix it immediately, or do we have some sort of liability on that? Probably not, but these were things we would need to flesh out more if we were going to move forward with a program like that.
I hadn't thought about the latter part, because in the federal government, that's an issue with OSHA inspectors. So, yes, good thing to run down and clear up.
So yeah, I think the first two are actually relatively easy. We could do those things. If we wanted to look more into the third, it would take some more thinking and fleshing out.
We discussed this some when we had the big STR conversation 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And for the folks who were not in favor of doing a prohibition on there was discussion on creating a voluntary program like this that's for positive reinforcement that's on there. I like the aspect of positive reinforcement. I think it's a good thing to do there. But I think the devil's in the details, like Doug has referenced here. You also not only talk about just the voluntary aspect, what happens when you find a violation, safety violation whatsoever, how do you enforce the fixing of that? But it's another job, it's another amount of man hours that's being put onto the staffs, another FTEs you're talking about, that's within that. And so I do think that thinking about this a little bit farther on the idea, how do you create something that's a positive reinforcement, but not make it a big liability on the village. So I would encourage you to flesh that out more, as you described.
I think one and two are the low-hanging fruit items here that would, and then we need to drill down more on that item 3, just to be sure that we're not creating something we might regret or could cause us the wrong type of problem. Because the first 2 items alone, of course, I'm sure they'll make a difference. I'm sure. How many people have, if you're a renter, do you have any idea when the trash cans have to go out? I mean, you really don't, unless there's a sign, or there's that instruction sheet, if you ever, you stated something like this, and they tell you in that sheet, you gotta take the garbage out this day or something, but if that sheet's missing, you can't find it, you don't worry about that. It goes back to that old theory of, was it Tom Peters? Nobody washes a rental car, and so folks are not gonna bend over backwards on that. But so that's why I like the idea of the owner.
Well, most short-term rentals do have a book on the place you're renting. I've rented various places.
Sure.
They'll have a rental or a book that says explaining this, explaining that, and if it's garbage on there, whether you put it down the garbage chute or whether you take it outside, that kind of thing.
And you gotta read it.
That's correct, and you got to read that street sign too that says no parking, right? So there's lots of things, the information we provided. Before you decide to put a poster out, and we're paying money for a poster, you might want to talk with some of the short-term rental owners
Yes.
as to what they think is valuable, because if not, you may have a bunch of posters in the garbage because it's a voluntary thing. So
Good.
let's not waste the money.
Good advice. Okay. Other thoughts?
Well, relative to the gold standard program, all of your concerns are obviously real, and something we have to follow up on. I think what we should do, because it is a proactive approach, because there is the possibility, obviously we run it by an attorney, that we can not only reinforce our own SR9 regulations, but also include some best practices that are valued by the industry itself. So there could be some really good things coming out of this. So my suggestion would be, let's put something together, run it by the attorney, run it by the council, and see what it looks like.
Yeah, I like your particular suggestion of, let's find out what the industry's best practices are here. We can save ourselves a lot of time if these folks have probably studied this a little and said, hey, this works, do this.
Well, if VRBO and Airbnb are well aware of Pinehurst.
Yes.
Because there's been a lot of discussion in the past 3.5 years with Pinehurst. And so when you talk about industry standards, like in Airbnb, they end up having a superhost. Well, are they interested in doing something that's going to be an evaluation factor for how the municipality looks at them? And not just do it for Pinehurst, but do it for every location. So can you adjust the industry standard there? Possibly. It starts with a conversation. I go back to a positive reinforcement type of system is something I like, okay? And how can we hash that out? I don't think what we have right now is something that's really feasible, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Let's keep on working on positive reinforcement stuff.
I mean, there still are, I believe, 2 towns in North Carolina that have adopted a mandatory annual permit program. And I still don't understand how that's different from requiring registration. This, to the extent it's voluntary,
I don't like that at all.
no, I'm not proposing that we do
Okay,
it. What
all
I'm
right.
saying is, instead of a mandatory program, which is not focused on encouraging positive behavior, I like this approach a lot better. It may not be perfect in this form, but worth refining.
All righty. We'll look for more feedback, Doug, on that one particular item there. We now can move to item 10, other business. Doug, you mentioned a few things earlier, which sort of were other business, but we covered them, the deer and the buffalo, the deer and the other item. Yeah.
Cover that.
Okay, anything else you want to bring up?
Just to follow up on what Jack mentioned, so there is the meeting on the Morganton Road NC5 intersection that is going to be Thursday, November 13th at the Pinehurst Elementary School between 5 and 7 p.m.
Doug, do we have any results yet on our culling activities in West Pinehurst Park?
I haven't asked. I can ask NC Wildlife.
Other questions for Doug or any items of other business?
I think our next meeting is on November 18th, correct?
It is.
Okay, so it's not the usual second Tuesday?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Is
thank you.
there, Doug, anything in particular you want us to be prepared for that meeting? Or is there anything here somebody thinks we should be sure to put on there, other than obviously the PDO?
Is it the 18th or the 11th? 11th is the second Tuesday.
Yeah, it's not the 11th. It's
Not
the
the 11th.
It's the
18th. Since there's only one in November and one in December,
Yeah.
put them in the
That's-
middle of the month.
So we know we're going to obviously discuss.
I don't think we'll have anything coming out of the planning and zoning that will make it to the council meeting by that time, right?
I don't believe so.
I think so either. There's one review, I think, on their meeting in the beginning of November. I don't think it'll make it to the 18th, though.
Anyone else? John, Dr. Morgan, Barb, is there anything else? Okay, well then, having exhausted,
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
we have a motion?
Second?
All's in favor?
Aye.
We're out.